No, I mean, we've been speaking to the Irish government for quite some time about this, and I've always felt that this was the only option left to the Irish government and to the victims, because we have a British government who are prepared to ride roughshod over the needs of those people who suffered the most because of the Troubles. And not just that, they're denying the opportunity for proper reconciliation, because without proper access to the truth and justice, I think it'll be very difficult to reconcile our communities. Nobody could have said it better than Emmett said it about the impact on victims, the way that they've been left to fight and campaign for decades just for a small amount of truth. I mean, it's just despicable, really, this British government think that they can do that. But it's also illegal under international law. They're also breaking the Stormont House agreement that they made with all the political parties in Northern Ireland and the Irish government and the people of Northern Ireland. And they've done that without any care for those people who are still suffering as a result of the past.
Lord Keane this morning has been speaking about consequences for the Anglo-Irish relations as a result of this challenge. What meaning do you take from that? What do you think he means when he says consequences?
Well, if anybody has created consequences for the Anglo-Irish relationship, it has been this British government, who have constantly ignored the vast majority of people in Northern Ireland. The Irish government, they've kept them out of the room in every negotiation over the past couple of years. And they have ridden roughshod over every agreement that they've made with either the Irish government, the political parties in the north, or the European Union. So, I mean, I think Lord Keane knows better than that. I think he was frankly embarrassed having to bring in this legislation, because he's somebody who probably understands this better than many in the British government. But this is their own making. They've done this themselves, and I think they will lose this case. But in the meantime, they should recognise that they're a lame duck government. There will be a Westminster election sometime next year, and they should pause the implementation of these legacy bodies, because nobody has any faith in them, and they will be overturned legally anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting you raised that, actually, because a lot of people will wonder, appointments have been made to the Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery. Work is starting there. Can that continue then against the backdrop of this interstate case, or do you know, or how does that work?
Well, right now there are judicial reviews going on in the High Court in Belfast, which I think will be interesting to see the outcome of that. We now have this case. It depends just on how the case proceeds. There may be a way in which the Irish government can seek, can insist on the British government, ceasing the implementation of this. But that's a bit of an open question at the minute. But the right thing to do, the only thing to do when this is going on, is for the British government to put the brakes on, especially when we know that the Labour government in London has said that they will repeal this legislation if they get elected.
Kenny Donaldson was speaking yesterday, Colin. Kenny, who obviously works with survivors and families, and he pointed towards what he described as the Irish government's, in his words, evasive attitude in the past, particularly towards a public inquiry into the Omagh bombing in the Republic. And he warned about this being something more than something symbolic, that the Irish government, need to do more than, in his words again, he said, take the moral high ground. Do you see that as a fair point, especially as Chris Heaton-Harris did point out yesterday to the Irish government's, in his words, own, inconsistent approach to legacy in the past?
Well, I think it's absolutely fair to say that the Irish government have to live up to their responsibilities. I've said that to them themselves, but it isn't fair to compare the level of responsibility that rests with the British government compared to what rests with the Irish government. It just isn't.
I suppose comparable. In terms of Omagh, it could be, though, because of the cross-border element there.
Yeah, no, I've been very clear, and we've been very clear with the Irish government about their responsibilities, and I think the best way that they could, alongside this piece of this legal action, the best way that they could show their concern for the past and for the victims is to do what they need to do to get the truth that they understand into the public domain. I've always believed that, and I've always said that. But we really have to focus on the real crux of the matter, which is the British government are attempting to close down access to truth and justice. They're literally telling people that even if their loved one was murdered and there's a way of putting somebody in the court around that, then that won't be allowed to happen. I mean, that is unbelievable. It wouldn't happen any other country in the world. It's a license for impunity, and it's an attempt to protect the British state, and that's what they always do, and that's what they were always going to do. And that's why I think the Irish government have been left with absolutely no choice but to take this legal action.
They've denied that, and I have a statement from the Northern Ireland office, and I'll run through that after our interview. Just finally and briefly, time is everything, as we know in legacy cases, and Emmett referred to that there in our interview column. Have you any idea how long it could take for this challenge to reach any sort of conclusion?
Well, we don't know, but experience will tell us it'll not be a quick process, and that's why the British government can stop this in its tracks right now. They can rip up this piece of legislation, they can stop implementing it, they can get back to Stormont House and begin a proper process of truth and reconciliation that actually gets to the truth and actually allows people justice where possible.